Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about using rack pulls as a grip training tool. This video will probably not be out for a very long time from the time I make it, but I had people actually come in when they've seen me doing grip training, just using rack pulls as a grip training tool, and people are like, oh my god, I thought you were against above the knee rack pulls. And it's almost as if people act like my stance changed in any shape, form, or fashion on this one, and it didn't. And let's be realistic here. When my stance changes on something, I'm more than happy to admit it. When I've been wrong on something, I'm more than happy to admit it. My stance has not changed on this. And I really don't grasp why people would think that it has. Because I'm not doing rack pulls as an exercise here. I'm not doing an above the knee rack pull as an actual exercise for training some sort of pull. I'm doing it for grip training. And I always stated in the past, and I'm going to get into a minute the problem with the rack pulls, but I always stated in the past its only value is as a grip training tool. Okay? An above the knee rack pull has no value outside of grip training. Now, as a grip training tool, it can be very, very good. And I said that before, and I don't know where the confusion is because I thought I made that very clear. That is the correct application of it. And so if you're using straps on a rack pull, you're completely defeating the purpose. And again, we're talking about the above the knee. Below the knee rack pulls are their own beast. They have their place in max effort training done correctly. Okay, they do have their place. But that's below the knee. Above the knee doesn't carry over to the deadlift, and it doesn't cause significant hypertrophy relative to the amount of fatigue it causes. I want people to think about the differences. I always talked about the one that it beats your body up. Number two, it beats up equipment. You're not going to do 1,000 pounds for grip training and drop it into back onto the pins. Okay, that's the big difference. What we saw, and I watched guys uploading videos of themselves doing it, and it's like, guys, this is so disrespectful to gyms. And we're living in a world now to where people have lost access to gyms. There are gyms that have gone out of business because of the state of the world. Everyone's having to go to home gyms. Hey, gyms are going to be rarer. They're harder to get into, and we're at a point now to where destroying and disrespecting the equipment in a gym for no benefit should get you kicked out. And I watched skinny kids doing above the knee rack pulls with 500, 600, 700 pounds who probably could not deadlift 400. And at the time, all these clowns were coming on the internet every time you would disregard it, and they'd be like, well, they blew my traps up. And it's like, well, for one, biomechanically, that's pretty unlikely because they're not even that great of a trap exercise. They're okay. They're okay as a trap exercise, but they're not particularly good. They're not as good as a shrug. They're not as good as a high pull. Okay, those things will blow your traps up. Above the knee rack pulls aren't going to. It might give you a little bit of stimulation. And I used to get annoyed at that because the guys who would say that didn't have traps. I mean, case in point, you guys remember when Scott Herman was up, oh, these blew my traps up, and he doesn't have traps. When you have a YouTuber with millions of followers who's talking about how this exercise blew his traps up and his traps still haven't blown up, that's all the evidence that you need. All the guys who got big traps while doing the rack pulls were, number one, doing other back work, and number two, were all blasting gear. And keep in mind, I'm not against anyone blasting gear. Just don't claim that it's all natty. That's the only issue. It's fine if people want to keep their gear use themselves. No one should have any issue with that. When you're claiming, oh, this is all natural gains and this programming will do this or that for a natural, well, now you're a lying piece of shit. And yes, there are plenty of YouTubers who've done that. And there are YouTubers who've done that who did rack pulls. It just is what it is. But it's not a good hypertrophy exercise. We saw Dr. Mike Israetel break down why it's a terrible hypertrophy exercise. And the evidence, again, look at how many kids we saw uploading to the internet themselves doing 600 and 700 pound above the knee rack pulls with straps who were tiny. They had no muscle. They had no muscle. Okay? While destroying gym equipment. Bends safeties, destroys bars. And here's the difference. People would say, well, if your grip slip, isn't that the same thing? It's like, look how much weight I have on the bar relative to what I could probably rack pull. Okay? Let's put that in perspective. How much did you guys see Alpha Destiny rack pull? 1,000 pounds? I deadlift more than him. And the latter is not subject to debate. It's easily provable. I have multiple times on camera deadlift more than he has been capable of deadlifting with a real deadlift at any point ever on camera. So I can pull more than he can. Look how light of a weight I have to use for these. Number two, since we're not pulling heavy and dropping it because, oh, we can't handle the weight because it's, 500 pounds more than our max. Right? We're not just dropping an enormous weight on the pins that exceeds the weight limit of the bar, possibly exceeds the weight limit of the pins and just dropped because we can't hold the weight any longer. Whereas when we do grip stuff, look at the difference. And in this case, it doesn't matter. You could do this on pins. I've did some of it on pins, but I'm using my safety straps. Nothing's going to get hurt. But are we just dropping the weight? No. As the grip starts to slip, you set it down. Watch what happens when I grip it. All right, we grip. Pick it up, hold it. And then as the grip starts to slip, the bar starts to roll. We set it down. We're not just slamming it. And it's the same thing when people want to rep out these. They're like, oh, let me just do high reps with, 400 pounds. Well, that's just beating the pen over and over and over and over. Yes, that destroys equipment. Destroys equipment, and there's no benefit to it. You're not going to get bigger doing it. Right? You're not going to get bigger doing it. The only thing that might get bigger doing it might be your abs and stuff, like your core maybe. But what about this for grip training? Why is this a grip training tool? People say, well, what about axial loading? Well, it's a lot less weight than you're going to deadlift. Because again, if you're doing it with double overhand grip, just training grip, it's going to be not even in the ballpark of your deadlift. And then we're not worried about deadlift mechanics. We're not worried about any of that going on, pulling from the floor. We're just worried about the grip in a way as it pertains to the deadlift. Okay, and it just lets you pull up there, because a lot of times when our grip really starts slipping, it's near the top. Lets you just focus on grip specificity for deadlifting, and you can do double overhand with a fairly light weight, and it's going to be enormously challenging for your grip. Okay, the same thing if you wanted to then go mixed grip. Let's say you wanted to build your mixed grip up. It works for that too. Just be aware it's going to be a lot more weight. But it lets us get a heavy weight in our hands and hold it without our deadlift being the limiting factor. The same reason that guys can pull hundreds and hundreds of pounds more above the knees than they can from the floor, we can use that to overload the hands for grip training. Okay, we can use that to overload our hands for grip work. Get a lot of weight in the hands without having to fatigue our deadlift training, because we're not pulling from the floor. We're not dealing with all the forces involved in the recovery issues. Okay, lets you get that max deadlift weight in your hands to be able to hold it. Valuable grip training tool for mixed grip too if you need it. But understand that what I'm doing here is not banging out ultra heavy weight with straps, because you'll never ever be able to rack pull using your grip as a limit factor. You'll never be able to pull what you can with straps. Okay, it's the strapping up while doing the short partial that's the goofy exercise that can hurt you, destroys equipment. It's nothing but a goofball lift. It's a big difference between that and throwing the straps off and using it as a grip tool. Using the same mechanics that let you lift that really heavy weight without, always the same level of fatigue, pound for pound. You're still getting enormous fatigue. We're using that to train our grip. Not even remotely the same exercise for the same purpose. My stance didn't change at all. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.